Greetings, Charles. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. Thanks. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Had a good weekend.
Yeah. What'd you get up to?
Yeah. Went out with our buddy Kurt and one of his friends on
Saw
Friday for happy hour at Chikai. Had a great time. Had a great time with them. Went out to did brunch with the girlfriend and a couple of her friends yesterday, and I thought I was going to be, I was the only guy there, and it was her and a couple of her girlfriends and stuff, and so I thought I'd kind of get in the way, or I could be potentially a little bit offensive, or hold the girls back from being a little from having their girls brunch or whatever. But actually, surprisingly, I had a really great time. Everybody got along really well. I don't think anybody held anything back. So it was, that's both of those events went well for me over the weekend. So
where'd you go for brunch? So
it was called North Italia, and it was down there in Sand Lake area, and or Italia North, I can't remember, but it's laid out perfectly for a restaurant in Florida. So they've got an outdoor area that is really high ceilings, but it's covered, but it's outside, so you're feeling like you're outside. And they've got heat lamps built into the ceiling and regular fans on top, so they can really control the environment very well. They've got a nice open bar area in front of the outside area, and they've got glass windows that can basically close it off if it does get a little too nasty outside. But weather was great and the food was fantastic. It was all from scratch kitchen Italian food. You would love it, man. The Italian meatballs I can't say enough about. It was fantastic brunch selection. Loved it.
Sweet.
And kept up my dry January as well. So even in the midst of all the other people there drinking, I have not had any drinks since December of last year. So
wow,
I felt pretty good about that. And it wasn't difficult. I mean, the longer you go, the easier it gets, honestly.
That's
so
definitely
even
true.
though it was tempting with a lot of the fancy drinks they've got there. So that was nice. And that was the other thing too, is when I was hanging out with Kurt and his friend Michelle, they weren't drinking either. And so it's nice to find some people to go out and, do some things with, where normally you'd be drinking. So, at Chikai or Mathers, there's lots of fancy drinks and stuff that you can get.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier when you're hanging out with people who also aren't drinking. So there's a lot less temptation.
Yeah, that's definitely
removing that prompt, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely, don't even really think about it much anymore. Even in a place where, while you're talking about that, I was wondering, a brunch in an Italian place, like, are mimosas even Italian, or is that just one of those things that has an Italian sounding name, but it has nothing to do with Italy?
Well, I don't know. What about Bellini? Is that sounds very Italian?
That sounds,
I don't know.
Yeah, but do they have peaches in Italy? I don't even know that they do.
I don't know.
I know Caesar salad was invented in California. I'm sure of that one. Bellini sounds very Italian, but again, it's got peach puree at the bottom. I don't even know if they have peaches in Italy.
Yeah, I don't think they have blenders in Italy. So who knows? Who knows where that comes from? It's nuts. They're just stealing stuff. I don't think they call themselves an Italian kitchen anymore.
Yeah, just making things sound Italian. All right, that's good stuff. I went and saw Nikki Glaser Saturday night at Hard Rock Live, and
nice.
She was very funny, and her best friend is a musician who opens up for her on the road and does tells some stories and does some music, and she's very funny as well. And then her last song that she sings is a Taylor Swift song from Taylor Swift's latest album. And then while she's singing it, Nikki Glaser walks out and starts singing it with her, because Nikki Glaser's a really good singer too. She was on The Masked Singer this season. And so they sing for a little while, and then it goes straight into Nikki Glaser's stand-up set. And she was very funny. She really talks about everything, and she hits some of the
Do tell.
adult. She hit some of the adult and sexual stuff pretty hard, pretty long, and I could
really. Did you just use those two words right in a row? Pretty hard, pretty long. Did we?
How dare you?
I mean, we are checking the explicit on our podcast from now on.
We have the choice now,
right?
Yeah, but she walked a couple people who paid good money to see her hard rock live, and then they got up and left.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I've been to a decent amount of comedy shows. To be honest with you, I don't think I've ever noticed somebody walking out. Now, maybe people were walking out and I thought they were going to the bathroom and maybe they never came back. But yeah, that's interesting that she, I've heard her a couple times on XM and she's got a mouth.
Yeah. I was doing open mic comedy a while ago and walked. A couple of girls were sitting like right in the front, right by the stage. And I made a reference to mansplaining and decided to pick on the two girls sitting up front. I was like, oh, honey, you look confused. Mansplaining is when a man when a man explains something to a woman in a condescending way. So now I've told you, and you'll know next time you hear it. And her just got up and left.
Come on, you can't laugh at that. That is so meta. It is great.
Exactly.
Come on.
That's what I was going for.
She's not your people. That's all.
Yeah. And I told you I'm considering going to see all my friends at the Orlando Improv and retaking their stand-up comedy class, which is it's as much of a social experience for me as it is a actually doing comedy thing, because I know a lot of the guys that are constantly in that class, and the class that just ended is having their student showcase on Thursday night. So I may go check that out. It's free to go to, and I've got probably 5 guys that I know that are performing at it. So I may go watch that and then see when the next class is going to start and decide if I want to go through that again. I think I might, but yeah, I do. I'm starting to, now as we get further from COVID, where places are open and places are feeling like normal again, I'm starting to miss a little of the getting up and performing in front of people. So I may.
Yeah, you definitely enjoyed it when you were doing it. I remember, going to see you a few times, and you were very excited about it. So I think.
Yeah, I enjoy real shows. I don't enjoy open mics so much when it's like 2 patrons and then a dozen comics who have heard everybody's act a million times before. But yeah, there's some things I've been thinking about in my approach that I may try to do differently and see how it works, from the way that I've done it before. So it's something that I'm open to, and we'll see if I feel inspired.
Well, I've got an idea. Why don't we make a little segment on the podcast each episode, and you try out a new joke, a new material at the beginning of or at the end of the podcast, and see if we can get some feedback on it.
I would sooner test out new ways to groom my pubic hair on the podcast than try a new joke every episode. So that's not going to happen.
All right, every other episode we can do it that way. No problem. I'm all about compromise. I'm all about compromise.
Absolutely not. No, I have never been a one-liner comic. You make a set of jokes, and that set goes together. And the idea of just dropping little trinkets out like that, absolutely not. That's
okay.
I'm no Norm Macdonald. He could do stuff like that. That is not my kind of thing. And even if it was my kind of thing, I probably wouldn't be good at it. So absolutely not.
All right.
My funny will continue to be spontaneous, or maybe I'll take an improv class and see if I can get a little bit better at the spontaneous funny than I already am. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to talk about before we get into the material? Nah, we've been at it 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and jump in.
Sounds good.
The human voice is the most beautiful instrument of all, but it's the most difficult to play. I was listening to an episode of Cinema Therapy this morning where they were reviewing the movie Hitch, with Will Smith and Kevin James. And in that, he says something that is related to what we have already talked about in previous episodes, which is the idea that the communication that you have with people is mostly nonverbal, right? It is body language is something like 60%. And I believe what Hitch says is that the next 30% is in your tone and only 10% are the words that you use.
Oh, I didn't remember the details of that. That's interesting, but
yeah,
it lines up in my brain. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I've definitely been in situations with my partners where there was nothing wrong with the words that I used, but apparently from the tone I was using, there was a really big problem. maybe you've experienced that before too.
It does ring a bell.
I mean, not with me. I mean, you've experienced that with your partners.
Oh, yes, with my partners too. Yes, it rings a couple of bells for sure, and I know that's something.
Yeah, so
even as a kid, my mom would tell me to kind of slow down and calm down about things when I was I would go from 0 to 100 really quickly, and it doesn't at that point. I realized that it doesn't matter what's coming out of your mouth because nobody's listening to the actual words at that point. It's just ease up on that emotion. It's automatically putting me on the defensive, and I've been working on that most of my life.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college, Rob and I would frequently get into something that was approximate to trouble, but it wasn't really trouble. And here's why. So okay. Rob and I went to a very conservative Christian Bible college, and we would often get criticized about our attitudes, which mainly involved us making fun of things and joking about things that we weren't supposed to make fun of and joke about. And when people would come to us and criticize our attitude, my response would usually be something along the lines of, tell me exactly the thing I said or did that you find objectionable. Because if you can't tell me a concrete thing I've said or done that you have a problem with and why it's wrong, then I have no use for this feedback.
And right, there's nothing you can do. I mean, honestly, right. it's okay. What does that mean? Right. Get specific here. When you say attitude, that's how do we fix that? Right. What is the right attitude? Give me an example of that.
Even. Right. Yeah. And it basically came down to, I don't like your personality. I don't like the kinds of things that you laugh about or joke about or make fun of. And I think a part of that could have very well been my body language and my tone when I was interacting with someone, because, when you're cynical and sarcastic and you don't take things seriously that other people think you should take really seriously, that definitely comes across in your body language and in the tone that you're using. Right.
Yeah.
So the chapter we're on right now is about men having an attractive voice, seductive voice is the title of the chapter, which is, again, a little, I think that's designed to get ears and eyes as much as it is to be effective. Seductive voice. What does that mean? Well, here's what it means to me, at least as I go through. And this chapter is only one page, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. But like so many of the topics in this book, it comes down to men communicating strength and confidence indicative of high testosterone, which leads to strong, healthy children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for men, that usually comes through with a deep voice as being more attractive than a high-pitched voice, which even as I was saying high-pitched, terms like nasal and whiny come to mind, which again, I don't know every woman's type, but I've never heard her say, Charles, I wish your voice was more nasal and whiny. That's not something that is frequently communicated to me, at least. I don't know what other experience men have had. But so yes, deep voice are more memorable. They command more respect in most cases. This is coming from a study at the University College of London. And also, the thing that I found interesting was it's not enough that the voice be deep, but also the word that they use, that Canwell uses in this chapter, is tempered with a breathy quality.
So because like out of breathy quality, like you just ran a marathon,
or walk 10 feet, depending on your current level of physical fitness. See episode 70 that was released this morning. I think breathy. I don't know exactly.
So wait, he wants men to be breathing too? Jesus.
Yeah. Do the demands ever stop? Yeah. So deep but breathy. And I don't know if I'll ask for some feedback from the people I speak with fairly often and ask them if they think because we can all agree that my voice is deep, but is my voice also breathy? I don't know. I don't think of it that way.
The more I read this, more I think this is for people who are working 900 numbers. I don't know. And for those kids out there listening to us, a 900 number is a phone number back in the day you used to be able to call and have, and it still might exist. I don't know, but
I don't know either.
For phone sex. So
yeah, sexually explicit conversations. I never used one. I did have a roommate. It was actually a roommate I replaced when I moved in with Rob post college. I moved into an apartment he was renting because somebody else moved out, and that somebody else that moved out had left the other roommates that were still there with a pretty hefty phone bill from 900 numbers that he had been calling, and then he just left and didn't pay the bill. So then that led to a fairly humorous event where I called the phone company. Now, kids, this is considered fraud, so please don't do this. I called the phone company pretending to be the dad of the person who called the 900 numbers.
Now, did you use your deep, breathy voice?
I certainly used my deep voice, and I also pretended to be very exasperated and frustrated, and pretended to be the father saying that my son had called the number and I had no plans on paying the bill. They had to remove them, and they were happy to comply. But in that conversation, I would pepper in some of the types of things that I believe my son might be calling to talk about with the operator. And Rob is sitting like on the couch across from me, trying not to crack up while I'm dropping these references about what my son was looking to hear and what my son was doing while he was on the phone. And
oh my God! So you pretended like you caught him mid masturbation? Is that
like I either caught him or assumed what he was up to? Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And so that
he's knocking the pictures off the walls. Damn it!
Yeah, it was very Rob had a good time watching me and listening to me make that call, and it was kind of fun. It was some performance art that I was particularly proud of in the moment. But again, I would not do that in the future. In the future, I would just call him and say, "Hey, I just moved into this apartment. The last guy left, and he left a bunch of bills, and now he's gone, and we don't anticipate he's ever going to pay. So, can you take these off?" And they would probably still say yes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, again, I don't know. I don't even know if those numbers exist anymore. That could be a relic of times gone by, Dan.
Yeah. At this point, that was before internet porn.
Exactly. Yeah. Now people have way more options. They don't have to do the same thing. So the reason that the breathy quality goes along with the deep voice is because while the deep voice signals testosterone, the breathy quality signals lower levels of hostility and aggression. Which again, if you can be strong without being aggressive or hostile, that's kind of the sweet spot that we talked about in previous chapters of what the ladies tend to like, right? The idea that you're strong and you're capable, but you're not flying off the handle and being overly aggressive.
Yeah. And, I think also that we got to remember here that the book is called Atomic Attraction, and a lot of it uses references for men attracting women. But, to be honest with you, being an attractive person in general, or, an attractive man, the things that they're talking about here in the book, can help you in other areas of your life. And we may have talked about this, but, in terms of, your own confidence as you go throughout your day with your job, interacting with other people, I think, it all kind of starts to really build up your confidence if you, start doing some of these things, if you're not already doing them, because that will change the way people interact with you. And that will then basically affect your opinion of yourself on some level as well. And if you're getting more positive responses, it's going to help build your confidence. And that can definitely carry over into other areas of life. So I'm wondering, Charles, have you ever worked with a voice coach or know anybody who has? And not necessarily to say, hey, I want to be a more attractive person, but obviously a lot of people do that for work, for
Sure.
singing, things like that. I was just curious if you have any thoughts around voice coaches, things like that.
I took a semester of voice in college and never really did anything with it. Learned to sing a little bit, but it was one of those, even as a 19-year-old, I was like, man, this is going to be uncomfortable. I'm not going to like this, but I might as well give it a try and see what it's like. So I did that, and singing in front of people was just not something I enjoyed at all. And most music, whether that's pop music or Christian music, which again, I went to Bible college, is not written for guys with voices like mine. Like my sweet spot is barbershop quartet type music where, I get to drop in the baritone and bassy stuff. But I wouldn't say I got a ton out of it because there was no real application, but I can say that having a deeper voice, I mean, even if I'm just doing a conference call from work and at the beginning of the call, I don't have anything to say. So I'm just kind of listening, and then something relevant and pertinent to my area comes up and I just kind of come in and say something. I mean, people do tend to listen to me and give what I have to say. It feels like a little more notice and respect because of my voice. And part of that is not just, a good part of it is I was born with, I got a healthy dose of testosterone in utero, and then at puberty again, and my voice is a little deeper than average. And so that's, luck, and I didn't do anything about that. But then, pairing that with the confidence of feeling like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I see an angle here that everybody else has not seen, and I need to voice that. I mean, that would happen constantly when I was on the road with your company, Dan, where, we would go out to do those engagements, and depending on how screwed up the customer environment was and how screwed up their IT environment was from a personnel perspective, we would spend more than 51% of our on-site engagements being business analysts, not being technical resources, because, we would have to, I mean, I went to one of our clients where they were like, okay, here's our plan. We want to make every email message go away after 30 days. That way, in case we ever get sued, we won't have to produce anything. And I'd be like, you can't run a business that way. You can't set your business to have a 30-day short-term memory and then everything goes away after 30 days and expect to stay in business. That's just not possible. And so I had to explain this to like C-level executives at the small company to say, I get where you're coming from and why that might seem like a good idea, but you can't actually run a company that way.
Yeah, honestly, of the hundreds or almost 1,000 companies I've worked with, I literally, I have come across one or two that do that it's like 60 or 90 days. It's like ridiculous. But again, it was one or two, and
right.
I didn't want to argue with anybody. So I was like, all right, this is what you want here. This is how you do it.
I would have to hear a really interesting case why that was going to work for them. And that's this company did not have it. It was like, we just don't want to have to, we don't want to have to participate in legal discovery. It was like, okay, well, good luck.
Right. So, I mean, my understanding is, so my family is into singing and performing and acting and things like that. They on an amateur level, and a couple of them, one of them is doing professional. But my thought is, and from what I remember hearing, is that a lot of the voice coaching and singing, regardless, they help you kind of identify where your diaphragm is and how to speak
Right.
from there, and kind of turn that into a habit that eventually you could just kind of do without thinking about it. Did you ever go through any of that with when you were singing? Did they get into where you should be singing from, or is that something that
Yes.
just you naturally do, and so it was really never an issue? Okay.
No, we definitely covered that. And, they talked about when you would take a breath before you had to sing for an extended period of time, more than you're probably used to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you take that breath, your belly should go out as opposed to your chest going up. And Dr. Glover's book, Dating Essentials for Men, he gets into some of this stuff a lot, and gives some exercises on things you can do to work on that breathing from your diaphragm instead of from your chest. And if you're breathing from your diaphragm instead of your chest, then you're going to be better at talking from your diaphragm instead of from your throat or from your mouth.
Mm.
There are a couple of other things that he doesn't get into the book. Well, he does a little bit, but things that can lead to your voice being more higher pitched than it would otherwise be naturally. And there's really two of them that come to mind for me. The first is anxiety. If you're nervous and anxious about stuff, your muscles in your body are going to tense, including your shoulders, your chest, your diaphragm. And the more tense they are, the more your body is going to sound bound up and your voice is going to get higher. So that's something to be aware of as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's another interesting phenomenon that I learned about originally from, as I learned about so many things when it comes to development and sexuality, from Adam and Dr. Drew on the Loveline radio show back in the 90s, which is arrested development. Not the overrated TV show that I don't find particularly funny, but the actual psychological effect of when something traumatic happens to you as you're growing up. There are parts of your mind that can kind of get locked into that time period. And I knew a guy that had some very nasty, very complicated stuff happen to him when he was a kid. And so essentially his voice never changed when he went through puberty because of just
Wow.
because of what his mind was doing to his body. His vocal cords just always stayed in that super tense, super activated thing. And his voice sounded like a little kid. And there's that's the result of some pretty rough, pretty traumatic stuff. And there's really no way to do anything about that other than working with a professional, a psychologist or psychiatrist, who will then, help you work through those issues, and then seek out like a voice coach or voice training to be able to relax your vocal cords and get used to speaking in your real voice that you feel, unsafe to share with the world because of what happened to you when you were a kid.
I mean, yeah, I have two thoughts on that. One, that's I've never heard of that before, and that's wow, yeah, that's unfortunate. And two, it goes to show how powerful the mind is in terms of actually exerting physical changes and effects on your body. And it really reinforces the fact that we really all need to be taking care of our mental health in order to take care of our bodies, right?
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely.
There's been lots of studies, but this is a very clear example of a physical effect from our minds. That's wow.
Yeah, it was crazy to listen to on Loveline, where, because Adam and Dr. Drew talked to so many callers on so many nights, just like thousands and thousands of people. At one point, after doing the show for a while, someone would call in, like a woman who was 26 or 27 would call in and say, "Hey, I've got a question. I'm getting this weird side effect from my birth control. What might this be about?" And then Dr. Drew would stop her and say, "Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But first, tell me what happened to you when you were around 8 or 9 years old," because they could tell just from her voice that she was kind of locked into this very specific period of her childhood. And that would be, then she would tell the story of, when I was 8, my uncle or my, the neighbor touched me and blah, blah, blah. And it's like they could hit on it with such precision down to within a couple years of what happened to her during her childhood, because her voice just got stuck at that place. And, that is something that, again, I know a man personally that happened to him, and it's real. And, there's bigger fish to fry there about, what can I do to have the most seductive voice? There's plenty of reasons outside of that just for yourself, you can work through that and deal with it. And maybe your voice never gets as deep as mine. It probably won't, because a lot of part of how you sound is just how you sound. But
Damn,
if
Charles, brag
you're
much?
stuck, again, as we've established before, it's not bragging when something happens to you that is out of your control. No cause for pride or shame. I got lucky. But yeah, so yeah, you can make some changes, especially if you're in a situation where, because of something like that, you're stuck in this high tense activated mode where your voice is higher than it needs to be. But that is something that can be worked through. I know that that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the meditation apps that I've listened to, that one of the things they have you focus on is they'll actually tell you to put your hand on your stomach and feel yourself breathing in and out, and they instruct you in terms of taking the, when you're inhaling and exhaling through, you should feel your stomach going in and out rather than from your upper chest. And just the very idea of touching that part of your body will help you focus on that and help you figure out how to make that change, how to breathe in and out from your diaphragm area, because that's what's going to push your stomach in and out. Similar thing happens also when you're working out with a trainer or a partner. They've done some studies where if that partner is actually touching the muscle that's supposed to be working when you're lifting, if they're touching that, it actually helps your brain use those muscle fibers in that specific area rather than the auxiliary muscles around it or the auxiliary tendons around it to move that weight. And it helps you actually really focus that mind muscle connection that people talk about, right? And I think a similar type of thing happens here with the breathing. And we also have some potential guests in the future, or a guest in the future who does some breath work as a psychologist. And so we might be able to have her on and talk a little bit more about breath work and how she uses it for therapy.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking with her about that. All right. So I think that pretty much covers the voice stuff. There is only so much that you can change to make your voice sound better. But one of the things is definitely speaking slower. I have a tendency to get going pretty fast when I'm talking. And
me too.
The ability to slow your voice down, pause more, and as podcasters, we know the advantage of that. The more you're willing to take pauses, the less you're going to fill it up with filler words. So there's benefits to that as well, and that makes you sound more confident.
And we're working on that for all your listeners out there. We're working on that. So
yeah, we're working on both reducing it and hiring a company that will edit them out for us. So between the two of those, we should be able to get it dealt with here in the next few episodes. I'm sure
we should be much more listenable.
Even more listenable, Dan. Even more listenable.
Even more.
So anything else on the voice front that you want to discuss?
No. I think
All right.
I'm good to move on.